According to that clock, the hour of 8:30 having arrived, I will call this meeting of the Trempealeau County Property Committee to order. We have a 12-item agenda. My agenda doesn't have adoption of agenda on it, so open meeting law requirements have been met by proper posting. I'll accept a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting as distributed.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Okay, members of the public will have a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. Members should be present at the beginning of the meeting or comment period will be waived. Public comment period may be curtailed or extended at the discretion of the chair and after advisement by the property committee. Phone number to call in is 715-538-1770. The public should feel free to make a call on that number. We will proceed while we wait for the influx of calls, and I'll turn this over to Kurt Berner from Samuels Group.
Morning, everyone. Good to see you today. Give you a quick update on progress. Some of you were able to tour the building over the last couple weeks. I would continue to encourage that so you can kind of see what's happening out there. Things continue to progress. The last of the precast planks will be set today. We did have some precast planks that needed to be reconstructed because of some dimensional discrepancies, but we were able to get that done. It was about a week's delay, but that's been cleaned up and taken care of. The changes of that are being bared by the contractor that had the dimensional discrepancies, but that's cleaned up and in place. Roof should be started to go on sometime yet this month. We were targeting the week of the 19th. Weather will determine that, whether we continue to have rain or not, but the roof will start in Area C and obviously work in the same sequence that we've been moving forward. Slabs continue to be poured. Interior block walls will be started once we start to get the exterior and obviously all the bearing areas done. So you'll see that the building is starting to take shape. You're starting to see the roof structure and those elements go into place. Steel will be arriving here in the next few weeks and installed, so you'll see the red iron that'll be going up on second floor as well. So there have been some contractors that have been struggling with manpower, so we've been pushing them to get more manpower on site, so that is impacting some of those areas, but it's something that's happening in our industry in general. It's not just your job, but it's something that we're working with contractors who are running tight on manpower. So overall, things are progressing well, and safety has been stellar. No lost time accidents on the job. Contractors are performing well and things are going well. So,
Since we're talking safety, Kurt, remember I gave you a call last week, and yeah, it was the safety factor, because we don't want to have an accident. And when those lulls were out there, or they had no flagmen whatsoever, because last week I had to call him because the buses, we come through here at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and everybody's trying to get to the courthouse and everybody's trying to get to school. It's just a total mess out here. And that was perpendicular to the on a state highway with no flagmen. I mean, it's kind of an accident waiting to happen, so I just brought it to your attention. Okay. And Kurt he was nice enough. He addressed it right away, and hopefully we won't have that again. If you do have to get out there, please use flagmen so we can keep our safety.
Yep.
And keep the public safe too.
Yep. Yeah, we addressed it right away. Make sure that they have people there, and most of that work to be able to impact that road is completed now. We will obviously have a few areas where we got to get on that side, but yeah, I appreciate the call for that. So, any questions on the update before we get into CBs? So CBs, Kurt did get pricing on 3 of them. I was out last week and tried to print them over the weekend, and I had printer problems, so I'm going to have to bring them to you next time. But we did get pricing back on the AV savings that Tim and Kurt worked on. We do have the pricing on the detention bunks that had to be swapped out, and then also the elevator changes, so I'll bring them to you. It's a net savings overall. I think the AV savings was like 180 grand. The other two combined were an add of about 90,000, so it's a savings of about 90,000 for those 3 CBs. But I do need to get you those details and print them out for you. So obviously I can't go over the details with you today, but we are continuing to have a couple other items priced in regards to those larger CBs. So next time when we meet, I will bring you those CBs as well as an updated contingency log to make sure that we can keep you up to speed on what's happening with the contingency funding. So, any questions on CBs? No? Okay, and then the last thing I just wanted to update you on was the work with the department heads. So we did have a virtual meeting with the department heads beginning of last week. They had come together prior to that virtual meeting and had some questions for me. We were able to talk for about an hour about some of the things that were kind of put into the design, some of the logic behind how it was configured. And we're shooting for October 3rd and 4th. It's been most of the responses that I've got back from department heads. I still need to get responses from a few that I'll send an email out today to those that I'm waiting for responses on. But then we'll put together a detailed schedule on each one of the departments that we'll meet. I'm anticipating about an hour with each department just to go through and finalize their program, finalize the staffing needs, and then we will finalize a space program that will then be put in to a floor plan. And the 2 ways that we're going about that floor plan from action last month from your group is to look at the minimal amount of work that it would take to get ADRC on campus, and then what we can do to minimize the work with the departments at the connecting point on the northwest corner of the campus, so where it connects. The second option is going to take that floor plan that we had presented to you last month and then make adjustments to that floor plan with the input from the department heads and their programming changes that would have been from the original time when we had established that floor plan. And then based on those 2 floor plans, then we plan on giving you a price for both of those options. And we're targeting to have that wrapped up here by the end of this calendar year so that you can make a decision on which option you want to choose. Dave has actually asked me as well to look at some of the existing space that is, not existing space, but the new addition space. If there is any space in each one of those departments that could be utilized for other offices outside of what they're configured for right now. If there is an office space that doesn't have somebody sitting in that office. So what I plan to do in harmony with these other 2 designs is to work with each one of the departments that are going to be moving into the addition, and then identify the staff that are in that location, and then give you a floor plan so that you can identify that. But I'd shared with Dave, I don't think that there are a lot of offices that aren't already assigned to someone. There may be a couple, but I will put a floor plan together so that you can identify what those are, and then we can take that into consideration when we're looking at all of the needs for all the areas. So.
Kurt, I do have a question.
Sure.
And this is a little different subject, but it pertains to the furnishings that need to be purchased. And I think there was a discussion number of what, $7.75 or $700,000, somewhere in there.
Yep, correct.
I assume, I'm hoping, I can assume that the modern, up-to-date furnishings that we presently have can be moved into the new structure.
Yes. The ones that still have life in them are planned to be reused. The ones that have exceeded their life would be replaced, is how that was going to be identified.
So the majority of the dollars would be allocated for new furnishings required by new services offered. For example, the commercial kitchen. Is that included, furnishings included in that?
That's a separate number. The kitchen equipment is included in our bids, but that's not part of that furniture number that's there. The furniture that I referenced for that $700,000 number was mainly just office furniture and equipment for the addition. And what our team did is they went through and identified furniture that is currently in use, and if there is any furniture that still has a useful life in it, then how do we reuse that in some of those spaces? So that's being evaluated and vetted in regards to where that is. None of those purchases have taken place yet. We're still finalizing that list, and that'll obviously come back before you, this property committee. But it is the intention to look at some of the furniture that still can function and be used. There's some of your stuff that is just old and antiquated, and these chairs, do we continue to use these? Do we put these in the new boardroom? I mean, those are the sorts of things that you have to ask yourself if that makes sense to do those sorts of things. So.
Well, these, I think, were not in this boardroom to start with. I think those light-colored ones, the newest ones.
Sure. Yep.
So, this is the upgrade. This is the good stuff.
To answer your question, Dick, you guys will see where we're reusing existing and where we're putting new, and you guys will have the decision in regards to when that purchase takes place.
Okay, I guess the key is that, what I heard you say is that furniture which has life left in it.
Yep.
And a lot of this stuff, like these tables are fairly new.
Yep.
And they're modern anyway. And so anyway, we are going to put these dollars towards areas where we absolutely need to replace the furnishings.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you guys will have like I say, you'll have the final decision on that. So we're working on finalizing that. So.
I got a question. Last meeting, I think you said that they're only going to have one entrance to the new building, and that's the only entrance for this building too, right?
Yep.
And you've got all these other entrances. What are you going to do with those? Are you going to make them? Can they go out those other entrances?
Oh yeah, those entrances will still remain, but it's not that they aren't going to come back in, and that will be a point of discussion when we get through this department review, because there is different levels of security. It was always intended that the campus was going to have one secured entrance where people were screened to come in. It didn't mean that you couldn't get out of the building, because they obviously have to get out for fire egress purposes, but it is the intended purpose that everybody comes through the screen to make sure that they're not bringing a weapon in, you name it, they're not bringing something onto the campus, so that everybody's safe and secure. The question has been raised of what happens after hours when staff isn't there, and then who do you give clearance to come in and work on a weekend or work after hours. That's a discussion that's going to come out through these department meetings that will then come back to you, the committee, and ultimately the board, to talk about what does that security model look like for this campus. And but the intended purpose is that we come through the new front door, everyone is screened, you can get out of the required emergency egress, but when you come back in, you would not be able to get back in there unless you as the board or whoever you're going to identify as the authority giving the approval to someone to have a card access to come back in. And there are card readers on some of those doors that could be function that way. It's a matter of how you decide you want to program it. So that will be a big topic of the discussion when we come back from the department heads. I guarantee you that.
I had a request from an official in Jackson County to tour this facility. They're years behind us in an effort to improve their corrections situation. I told them I'd ask, but at some later stage.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else, Kurt?
No, that's kind of an update. I guess the only thing that I want to clarify in the third and fourth, when I left here last time, I assumed we were going to have two of you attend that, and when I left, I think it was you and Doc and maybe Audie was an alternate, those three, of how you would attend. And I know, David, you had sent me an email. If we get three at those meetings, we now have to have a public meeting. So that's why I was pushing for two, so we could have them individually without them being public. Not that I'm trying to exclude anyone, but then we could, if you wanted us to convene later at maybe on the 4th, like if you wanted to have a meeting on the afternoon of the 4th so I can bring you up to speed on all of that, we could do that, or we could do it at your next scheduled meeting, which I think is the following week in October. I just didn't want anybody to feel like they're being excluded. We were trying to do it so that on that 3rd and 4th, we're not having a quorum, so that we could have those meetings individually with the department heads, so.
I
We
don't
still
know, I
good
think,
with that?
An overview on the 10th would suffice.
Okay.
Anybody else have any thoughts to that?
It'd be great if I wasn't involved, because we've got budget hearings for about 8 days before that.
Yeah, you're gonna be busy.
So maybe it's you and Audie are
Yeah.
the ones that I, so kind of think the 3rd and 4th is what I'm targeting, and I'll get you a list on the times. Is it
Okay.
better if I stay away from early mornings for you?
No, early morning is good for me.
Okay.
8
Okay.
o'clock.
8 o'clock.
After the bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
8
Okay.
o'clock.
Okay. Sounds good. I will put a schedule together, get it out to department heads and the two of you, and then we'll plan to give you guys an update at the next property meeting.
All right.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments for Kurt? Thanks, Kurt.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, I got one, Kurt, one question for you. Jeremy keeps saying we gotta blacktop this, we gotta pay for that. How come that wasn't put in to the bid for the jail? Because they tore it out because they had to redo all the street work. That should have been all one.
What are we referring to?
The dirt lot?
Yeah, no, the gravel lot.
Well, yeah, that was an afterthought, but that wasn't part of this. This was,
But
this
they-
was thought of after this was happening because we needed somewhere else to park vehicles. And then the city won't give me a permit as it sits right now to blacktop it because they had I didn't have a watershed report from the DNR, I didn't have a bunch of other stuff, and they wouldn't give me a second permit.
Oh, are you talking about the lot on the southeast corner?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And they tore it up for when they were doing the street and all that, and I just figured that should have been part of the project.
We
Why
did it as
wasn't
a temporary lot for parking, and I think right now you're thinking about putting it to permanent.
Yeah, but that won't be until the following year because of issues I have with the city. The only reason that they tore it up though, it would have been torn up whether it was lawn or not when they had to reroute the storm. system.
Utilities.
Right, so it should
But
have
it
been
would
part
have
of the
been, even
project.
if it was grass, it was part of their project to put it back to grass. I had already made it.
You changed it
a dirt
after-
lot, though,
okay,
Because we
okay.
got somewhere to park. So what, the gravel lot is now is my project, not theirs, because we needed somewhere to relocate the county vehicles that were in the back of the building that no longer has that parking.
Kinda get it.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Kurt.
Krista, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. So my first agenda item I have on here today is our emergency procedure flip chart. So I do have a paper copy. I'm not sure how familiar everyone on this committee is, but there is an emergency procedure flip chart that the county does utilize. It was last updated in November of 2015 for the records that I can find. So it's been a minute since it's been updated. At the last Security and Facilities meeting, we started discussion on how we should proceed with updating this this flip chart, I should say. So we're really just looking for some guidance from this committee as to how you feel would be appropriate to tackle this. There's a lot of pieces to it, a lot of maps to it. Since that discussion, I've also had a department head reach out to me with questions on where they're supposed to proceed for a fire drill. Since the new building has started, that was their designated area previously to meet for a fire drill. So there's some, I would say, timely updates that need to be made. So at this point, really just looking for guidance from this committee as to how you'd like to see this updated. I don't know if Ashley, if you have any other background knowledge on this one.
I guess I can tell you where that one came from, was from this committee directed the Security and Facilities Committee to create a subcommittee, so lots of things there. And they actually are the ones that created that document, submitted it to the Security and Facilities committee. They approved for it to go to the Property Committee, and then it made its way up the chain. That's how it was done in the past. Whether that's the proper way of doing an emergency flip chart for the staff, that's the correct way, who knows, but that's what was done the last time.
I think the important part is maybe not the procedure, but the fact that it gets updated a little more frequently than apparently this last time. You know, we have had building-wide evacuations in the past, and I don't know if there is a location designated for different people to report to, but the last time we did an actual evacuation, the building was evacuated in just about 5 minutes, which was great. But an alarming percentage of the employees ended up at CJ's Bar downtown. And
That's a
so
meeting spot.
that should be listed as don't go there.
And I think too, in the meantime, while we are working on updating this, I know I've been in contact with Jeremy, and he does have some maps, so maybe we can just, like, in the short term, send out to department heads just stating, here's some maps that are more updated than what we have in here, and if there is a fire drill or an emergency, that we can give some designated areas while we're working on updating.
Well, and there's obviously going to need to be another update once the new building is
Correct.
done in another
Right,
year-ish.
right,
So we'll have to have a plan to get that done.
right.
Was there ever any external guidance brought in to help with that?
To my knowledge, I don't believe so. Maybe Jeremy or Ashley would have background on that.
I can tell you the subcommittee was someone from law enforcement for the security part of it. Then there was an attorney on there. There was human resources, obviously. Who else was on it?
Emergency.
Someone from the outside, no, because they didn't have funding to pay for somebody to come in and do it, so they created it themselves.
Sure.
So an outside source, the answer would be no. It was just different departments that would,
Give input to it?
yes.
Yeah. One thing that you might want to consider, there's another entity that is under the umbrella of OSHA for the state of Wisconsin called WisCon.
Okay.
And they are a free service that you can request to come in and do an audit of any type of safety or security of a building. And they will give you, the specific guidance and OSHA rules that we may be, not even following that we didn't know about. And if you are under their guidance and OSHA plays a visit, they can't do anything because you're under that WisCon help.
Sure.
So they do the emergency, evacuation, fire drill, all that stuff, and they can give you real good guidance on that. I've used them before, so
Okay.
something to think about.
And we do actually have a safety consultant that we do work with through our excess work comp, through our excess work comp. And he gives us another set of guidelines through the Department of Safety, so it's DSPS that we actually work underneath rather than the OSHA standards.
Yep.
So he might be able to plan as well.
Sure.
in
Yeah,
updating.
either one of those would be good. Yeah.
Okay.
Dan, has the Emergency Management Office been a part of that in the past?
It has. The U.S. Marshals Service has also done several security surveys of the building. And, but I think it's a good suggestion that we contact WisCon,
WisCon, yeah.
take advantage of that.
I think it would be appropriate to continue with the past practice of the Securities Committee forming that subcommittee. Don't you think? And then utilize all these resources that everybody is aware of here for that purpose. But I think, it's correct, we need to be looking at this every couple of years probably anyway. And of course, in this situation, we've got to do something next year. Probably about the time or prior to opening that new building.
It'd be nice to have a process kind of delineated so that, every 7 years we don't go, somebody should update this. That it's kind of continual and gets paid attention to by a designated group.
Yeah.
The personnel is going to change, but the group can stay the same.
Yeah.
All right, so we will form a subcommittee then to work on updates, if that sounds okay.
Sounds wonderful.
All right.
I just want to make one more comment on that. The only issue that I would maybe see with that is the security subcommittee only meets quarterly.
Yeah.
And so the next meeting there isn't until November. They create a subcommittee, I don't know when they would start meeting, that'll be around the holidays. So I can't even, I know the last time they did the flip chart with the meetings that they did, it took them 8 months to meet often, figure out what they're doing, because it was hours and hours of work they put into it. So I don't know how quickly that's gonna happen. And if you're already getting to closer to fall of next year, then I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that.
I think because we brought it up in the way the world works, we should move quickly to designate a spot to evacuate to, since one of the major spots is no longer available. And then, other than that, we can maybe take our time a little bit with the rest of the updates on that flip chart. But it would be nice to have everybody know where they need to go tomorrow if we have to evacuate the building. So how do we do that?
I think in the short term, I could work with Jeremy to get some updated maps out to at least all department heads, and then we can even do like an addendum to the current flip chart book.
Okay.
Because all staff, all new hires do sign off that they've received a copy of this as well, if the committee is okay with that. Jeremy, are you okay with that? Sorry.
Just say yes.
In the short term, while we're working on updates to this booklet, you and I would just work together to get some communication out to department heads on where they should be going in the meantime.
But I think too, Dan, that the fact that this has been brought up, there should be a real effort, considered effort to begin working on this as a subcommittee or the committee of that securities committee. I think failure to do that, I think, would be kind of negligence.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
I think
It's
it's
just
gonna-
that we need a location for people to go currently, so.
That comes first, but then I think that the subcommittee should be meeting and putting in the time, if it's necessary, to do it as soon as they can.
Yeah.
Especially now with the new building and the different, moving all the offices around. When you tell this office, now they meet here, well, with the new building, they may meet totally someplace
No,
different.
that'll be
And I
next-
think to coordinate all that together, that's gonna be a chore, so it's gonna take a couple meetings, that's for darn sure, because they still haven't decided on the placement of all the new offices, the offices.
And I guess what I was pointing out is that I think we've got two different reviews we're talking about. We're talking about an immediate review,
Yeah.
and then we're talking about the preparation next year for moving into that new building. And that's going to not only have to be set up, but then it'll have to be reviewed 6 months later to see what the problem is with it, because obviously it's not going to be perfect to begin with. It's going to take time to improve upon it. There's going to be some work ahead.
Anything else to do with the flip chart? Next.
Next is the employee security screening policy. So this was another discussion that was briefly brought up at the last security and facilities meeting, and I know Kurt briefly touched upon it. So we, again, as the security and facilities meeting, we're looking for some guidance as to how we proceed with creating quote-unquote a policy for employee screening once the new building is up. And after Kurt met here this morning, it sounds like maybe we should just wait on this topic until after the department heads all meet with Kurt. But again, just looking for guidance if all employees will be required to go through one point of entrance for screening upon entry to the building every single time.
Yes, sir.
You know, I hate to make any statements about my opinion as far as security goes, because my opinion as far as security and reality are two different things, so I'd like to see one point of entrance, but I know because of the history, you can hold to that for a significant amount of time, and then things kind of deteriorate a little bit, and people start using other methods to get in and out of the building. But my personal opinion is we need to designate one entrance and keep it at that. Now, whether that is going to happen or not isn't unknown yet, because there's a lot of discussion going on as to how that works and where departments will be located in this campus will determine whether we can actually do one entrance or not. So I don't think we can do anything with it at this point.
That sounds good to me. We can just kind of keep that thought in the back of our mind until we get a little bit closer to where we need to be.
Tim?
May I address the chair?
Yes, you may.
I think the question I'd like to know from Krista's inquiry is not whether or not you go with one entrance or not. My question is, are you going to have all the employees screened through the metal detectors by deputies?
And I don't think this committee is prepared at this time to answer that question.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think there's going to be a lengthy discussion in that regard. We have screened employees in the past, and it did not go well. There was a lot of upset employees. We did a poor job of education and communication prior to putting that practice in place.
If I could say something, I
Yeah.
can say that there was a lot of discussion, hours of discussion on this topic when the building project first started. And I think that if any discussion is gonna take place, that the sheriff needs to be involved with any discussion, because for the security purposes of why it was put into place and designed the way it was, is a security issue, and I think he needs to be involved with any conversations.
Well, and the assumption is his employee or employees would be responsible to complete that task, so it'll have a direct impact on his personnel and his budget. So I agree with you. We can deal with that in the immediate future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Mr. Robertson.
Morning.
Morning.
You got your budgets last time for IT. Did everybody get a chance to look that over? And anybody have any questions on that before we got into the updates? I mean, I did not reduce my levy by 1%. I apologize for that, but the overall budget total is reduced substantially from last year, but most of that was outside of levy, the reduction. So I will meet with the Exec Finance Committee, and they will ask pointed questions and determine whether or not all the things I'm introducing have merit. But if there's any input you have, feel free to reach out anytime. I can answer any questions regarding anything that's in that budget that I've put forward. Any questions on that? All right. Phone update. We're still waiting for one more vendor to bring a solution in front of us. I called all the area counties around us. There's like 8 that have on-premise Mitel solutions, 1 county with an NEC on-premise solution, and 1 county with a Cisco on-premise solution. So we as a team decided we should bring Mitel in, since everybody around us has got Mitel. But it's taken a little while to get that scheduled. But hopefully the committee that's a collection of stakeholders that are looking at the phones are going to make a selection, and then I would bring that vendor to next month's property meeting to do a demonstration of their proposal and put it in your hands as to how you'd like to proceed. If that works, I think October's as late as we can go if we want to get this off the ground sometime in early 2023.
Mitel is it on-prem or?
It is an on-prem solution. We've looked at one other on-premise solution through our current vendor Convergent, brought in Avaya, and we looked at that. And then we've looked at 3 hosted solutions that wouldn't be an on-premise, which is a little bit scary because it's a phase 3 solution that not a lot of counties have gone to yet. So I've had some encouragement from the area department heads. La Crosse's was particularly excited hearing about the numbers we were getting back on our hosted VoIP solutions, and so he's like, you should go for it so that we can all move forward with that and you can become a demo county. I'm like, well, maybe you first, but so we'll see how that goes.
We've been beta county before. It's not worked well.
Well, you got a lot of beta going on in your new building, and there's a couple vendors that plan to show you off, so it's gonna be entertaining. I just want everybody to understand on this committee, once we do select a vendor, regardless of who it is and how popular the choice is amongst the stakeholders, when a new solution is introduced to the staff here, there will be a hue and cry that'll be heard from space, and it'll all come to you. They're not going to like it. It's first time in a new phone system after 18 years on the old one is going to be a trying experience for all of them, and I'm hopeful that they'll be patient with us. Staff have been wonderful to work with for the IT department. We've been changing stuff on them regularly for the last 5 years, and they've rolled with it so far, but this is a big one. So prepared for some headaches there.
Question, I didn't understand everything you said about the phone system, and I don't expect I ever will, but technology seems to be going away from having a phone on everybody's desk in this building. And are any of your proposals or any of the quotes you're getting going in that direction?
They all are.
They all are.
Even the on-premise solutions, we're reducing the number of desk phones because we want to have that hybrid experience so that next time we face a dilemma or when they need to make flexible work for people that are rarely in the building, we can work from wherever. And we want the redundancy built in so that you could do your communications from any device. We don't want to be stuck to a desk phone. And a lot of your 20 and 30-somethings that are coming to work for you, they look at a desk phone like I look at a buggy whip. It's like, what's it for? So we're trying to bring flexibility into the process and be as functional as possible. But it's going to create some headaches. I don't like answering a call through my laptop any more than anybody else. But an app that runs on this, that's what I'll use all the time, and I won't need a desk phone. But there are going to be others that are going to want desk phones, and we're planning for a certain number that are going to have desk phones. But many people that are going to want a desk phone aren't going to be assigned one initially, and that's going to end up being, okay, well, you've justified the reason. It's $153 for a desk phone. To include that in the budget, you're gonna have to come up with funding for that. So we're gonna put that in your hands, deciding, how many desk phones do we go with at the start, based on how much I can afford to cover in this year's budget. So, because we're trying to keep this a revenue neutral process, and to pay for the phones up front saves us a lot of money on the VIG, so we're not paying interest on rented phones. And then as people come to realize, I've got to have this desk phone, well, then we make adjustments as we go. I don't feel that buying everybody a desk phone up front is going to serve the county well. It'll end up being a large investment that may not have been needed.
Wouldn't we start with none and go from there?
That's not possible because we have several employees that have computers provided by the state. So the court suite, the clerk of courts, and the DA's office, I can't put a client on their laptops. So they will need desk phones. We have a couple people that, like Tammy in the clerk's office, she's going to have a switchboard on her side, so she's going to need a phone like that. The front desk for ADRC will need a phone like that. Anywhere where there's shared desks, like the booking area or in the jail, where you have multiple deputies using the same phone, they'll need a desk phone instead of a laptop.
And those departments that have a receptionist because they have multiple employees, one phone line coming in currently, and then transferring calls. I see that becoming a thing of the past as well, but I don't know if we're there yet.
One of the concerns we have is we still don't have a lot of detail on what the security solution is going to look like in the new building. It's my understanding that it's completely self-contained and is not connected to our phone system in any way. However, best laid plans of mice and men, it may turn out that the whole thing is dependent on the phone system and we're supposed to page out from whatever phone, or the PA system in the new building. It's my understanding none of that is attached to the phone system anymore, so, but how is it going to work? We haven't really had a good breakdown on that, and I'll have to work with the project manager as to how that, and get some meetings with these people that are providing those services and find out how they work to make sure that we're not selecting a phone system that doesn't work with that. Currently, we have a security solution where we set your phone off the hook and a deputy will eventually show up at your office because that's a sign that you're in trouble. Well, I can't find a new solution that's going to do that without spending a lot more money. So does the new security solution include panic buttons in the places that are appropriate in the new building? Will they be included in the old building? We just don't know the answer to those. So that's why we're taking so long to get this decision in front of you, because we still have some details to work out as to what's going to be exactly required. Any more questions on phones?
Thousands of them.
Yeah. Well, I've been impressed with the vendor proposals so far. They've bring in their best numbers, and some of them are they're pushing really hard to get our business, and they want us to be a site they can show off. So we'll see how that goes. We're also close to a decision that's probably going to happen this week on our hyper-converged solution. We're trying to do our due diligence on all the costs of ownership. The proposals included everything we asked for, but they're extremely complex. $250,000 of money involved, but we need to know is how does this affect the Microsoft licensing? How does this affect the SQL licensing? Are there other costs we're not seeing here? We have to make sure that everything's bundled in with the proposal before we accept it. What's the cost for hardware and software support after 5 years? We don't plan to buy this and then replace it in 5 years. We want to get a 7 to 10 year lifespan out of this. So we have to make sure that we're getting all those numbers lined up so we have good information going forward before we make that decision. We have 2 finalists that either one of them are going to work fine for us. We're just trying to use the guidance that you've given us in the past, which security and maintainability are our top priorities, and we're trying to pick the solution that meets those requirements best. New building and the old building, FF&E was brought up recently by Kurt. I have $50,000 reserved in that FF&E budget for the new building. The most likely scenario, the IT team we toured a week and a half ago, or was it last week? It all blurs together for me. And we did notice in the cell block areas and in the D block areas that cellular connectivity on all of our different phones was pretty weak, and the roof isn't even on in some of those spaces yet. So we think cellular boosters are going to probably be a requirement. They were included in the original proposal somewhere around $158,000. We nixed that because we don't know what we don't know until the building's got a roof on it. So, but I don't think that we're going to be required to reach out and grab a solution that expensive. I'm very hopeful that we can keep it well under that. And we have to work with the stakeholders to make sure where our cell phone signal is absolutely essential in the new building, and how much booster do we need. I mean, primarily, my understanding is the sheriff is going to insist on cellular connectivity in the EOC and the dispatch area. If we have an emergency and you need to call people in, you need to have cellular connectivity. But outside of that, do we need cellular connectivity in the jail block? I'm not sure why, but maybe the sheriff has answers there as well. So we'll continue to work on that. Once the building's sealed up in November, I'll have more answers for you on that. We have switches and equipment for the new building. However, we don't know for sure until it goes in, you know, how many things are we going to have to light up that we don't know about yet. So we've built in enough capability in the switches we've purchased for the new building. I don't think I'm going to be required to buy any more of those, but that's why we reserved that $50,000. When it comes to the old building, one of the things that, again, maintainability, we have 10-year-old Cisco switches littered all over this building that is going to be a completely separate system from what we're employing in the new building. And I don't have staff to be maintaining two completely different network solutions. Just like Jeremy doesn't have staff to maintain two different security solutions and two different badge systems. So hopefully, my thinking was that the remodel of the old building was going to include dollars to replace those switches so that my systems match on both sides. But it's becoming clear that there's not going to be a lot of dollars, if any, available for such. So right now, myself and my team, we're working on trying to figure out a way if we can find dollars right now inside our own budget, shift priorities or do something to try and pre-buy some switches for this building so that we're, or at the very least, access points so that we're managing the same access point system on both sides. We're working on it, and I'll hopefully have a further detail in October. But it's getting hairy because you're looking at 9 months to 16 months for delivery on switches. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Edge, yeah, the other change in the new building is we are now going to have a redundant connection from TCC. So we're going to have internet fiber coming in to the south side of the building where it is currently coming in now, and then when the dispatch center is occupied in the new building, where there's going to be a handhole outside there, and we're going to have fiber coming in there. Well, I've worked with our vendors on our current routers. They should be able to handle dual connections coming in and automatically fail over. If one network gets cut, the other one will automatically take the load. But we're currently working with them to make sure that the existing equipment will do that. If it does not, that's another expense. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get new edge devices to handle that redundancy. On budget, I was asked last meeting to bring a number on what it would cost to replace the office suite inside the organization. One of the reasons I had to increase the spending on our Office 365 licensing in next year's request is that Outlook 2013, which is on most people's desk, is no longer supported for Office 365 use. Microsoft really doesn't want to sell you a perpetual license for anything anymore. The quote I got is a ballpark quote, $383 a seat. I would need 175 seats of that. So somewhere around $58,000 it would cost. Now that would probably be a 9-year investment. So you spread that cost of $58,000 out over 9 years. Well, an Office 365 G1 license, which is what those 175 users have right now, costs $98 a year. A G3 license, which is what several department heads and 34 staffers have here, allows you to download the fully functional version of the Office suite. That goes for $218 a year. So that $120 difference per year is what I would have to pay. That's what I included in the budget, was upgrading people to that higher license so that we can download the latest Office suite products. Well, basically in a little over 3 years, you would pay the cost of that $383 Office suite license versus going with Office 365. And I know that is just as confusing as all get out, so I'll pause and let you absorb that.
So was there a suggestion there, Tim?
Well, either I have to find funds to cover the $58,000 up front or increase my budget by X amount of dollars for next year to buy the Office suite up front so that we'd have that installed on everybody's desk, and save ourselves that $120 per user for 175 users, or I just go ahead and upgrade the Office 365 as it is in the budget. But
Can you give us the dollar difference between one and the other?
about,
Over the-
I'd have to come up
over the
with
9 years.
$30,000 above what I put in the budget in order to
Pardon?
buy these licenses up front.
Pardon, 58.
What I put in the budget is about $58,000, or
Oh, so you've got that in the budget, you're saying?
I've got the expansion of the Office 365 licensing. Mr. Orsh asked me last time to come up with a number. I'm increasing the budget by $27,000 to cover the change in licensing and to add another feature that I won't go into because it's confusing. But 30,000 of that is happening regardless. So I can shave $27,000 off that number, or, excuse me, $23,000 off that number if I buy these licenses. But those licenses cost $58,000. So the difference, I have to come up with a magical 20, what's
Well,
50?
28,000, right?
Yeah. I would have to increase my budget by $28,000.
But my question is, by coming up with the $58,000 now, how does that compare with going out and going the other method over that period of, what, 7 years
Right.
or 9 years? What's
My
the-
budget changes year over year. It would go from, instead of the $53,000 I'm requesting, it would be $30,000. So you'd save $23,000 a year.
By
So,
by spending the money now?
By spending the money now.
So 23,000 a year, and that's over how many years again?
9, wasn't it?
You'll get a 9-year investment. We
9.
bought 2013 back in 2014, and it's running out of gas.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
in
find that now.
2023. So it's about 9.
But you don't know that. You don't know if Microsoft might say,
You're just
2 years
guessing.
from now, we're cutting it all off.
Well,
Exactly.
Yeah,
They-
we can't.
They are driving you
Predict
towards the
technology
subscription
advances.
model. They really don't want to sell you a perpetual license.
So there are no promises.
They gotcha.
So you may spend the money, and 2 years from now, you don't have your payback yet, and they're gonna say, sorry, all those licenses are no longer
Well, that would be a
valid."
good timing on their part,
No.
you know, I mean, for them.
This has been a frequent discussion for the last 5 years at every IT conference I've been to, because government, with Act 10 and the levy limits, subscription prices on software are just killing us. I can't, it's nice to be able to invest in a software that has a perpetual license to it, and then you can figure that cost for the next 7 years. Well, subscription is just year after year after year, and it's grinding us down. If you look at the professional services numbers, I can't budge those, because they're all subscription. So,
Tim, I have a question. How
Yep.
far back are they doing security updates right now for standalone software versus subscription?
yes, they still do. We get updates every month for Office Suite products.
I know what was it, Windows 10 they quit doing updates for, or Windows 7? I can't remember.
Windows 7, they quit.
Yeah, so are we gonna buy something now that in 5 or 6 years they're not gonna do security updates for?
I
Because
think
they're
that's where
pushing us towards
David
the-
is going. Yeah. They don't abandon their most profitable product line gently. I think Microsoft has been sharp with their words and saying we're not supporting this anymore, but they tend to drag it out a little longer than people expect. But we've been warned for 2 years now about the end of Outlook support for Office 365 products on the 2013 suite. So some of the programming we've done here, the staff has done some access databases that help people keep track of their time here, won't work with the new Office suite. So we've got to update some of our programming and whatnot, and monitor. We still have 2001 version Excel spreadsheets floating around here. So, migration's slow.
Another question I have, and I might be wrong in this, but if we're still looking for a solution for time cards to be done online versus the way we're doing it currently, is that something Microsoft can handle, like included in the suite?
I don't think that we've looked at Microsoft as a solution there. We are currently asking questions of our current financial system provider, and they're going to be showing us some possible solutions for that. They also have possible solutions within the existing product line we have that we might be able to consider. But I don't think we'd be looking outside of that for a payroll direct entry.
So, well, I think I hear you saying that you don't have the crystal ball to enable you to make a good, a solid recommendation.
The safe solution is to switch people over to the Office 365 and do so in a way that we're not just wholesale moving everybody over to that higher level license of Office 365. The lower level license, which all of you have G1 seats for access into our network and functionality. It doesn't come with that Office download that you can put a fully functional Office suite on your computer, but it does come with an online version. So there are people here that do spreadsheets, Word documents, presentations all day long. We absolutely have to get them to that higher level of license so they can have the latest and greatest from the Office suite. But there's probably many workers, if we sit down and have the hard conversation with supervisors, that they do a spreadsheet every once in a while and they don't need it. So keep them at the G1 license, allow them to go out online, go into their Outlook, use the online suite of tools. It works just fine for probably 70% of users. But we just have to figure out who those workers are, and it's not going to be an easy process. I mean, that's a hard question to ask somebody. How much work do you do? And if you only open Word documents to read them, there's really no purpose for me to be spending money on a suite or upgrading your license. The G3 license does come with some other advantages. It does have a legal hold, so that there's, the HR department and Corp Counsel have that. Most of the departments have that. So in case we run into a scenario where we have to go back and see something from past, it's held there. It comes with the extra level of security and various other throw-ins that are nice to have. I believe that the course of action is to go forward with the upgrade of the licensing. It's the safest path. But
Upgrading to the 2013.
upgrading to 213 with perpetual license, I do not think is a safe path.
Okay.
Primarily for the reason you mentioned, we don't know what Microsoft's going to do. They might cut us off in 4 years before we realize the savings. We don't know.
So you're saying go with the subscriptions is what you're saying?
As in the budget.
Right.
It's what I would lean towards.
My experience from working in the business world, the solution that you get online for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's fairly robust. I think most people would get everything they need out of working on the online version. To your point, Tim, we might need some department heads and one or two other people that really need the additional functionality. So, I mean, that I think we can get by. I would agree with you.
Yeah, and the number I gave you was for the budget purposes, was not a pie-in-the-sky view of things. I assumed that people were going to insist on having the full version for the most part, and only put 40 or 50 people outside of that parameter. But I think we can get that number lower with proper action and some training. One of the things we have to do as a department is when you go online and you're doing the work online, it automatically wants to save it to the cloud. Well, we don't have policies that work with that. So we'd have to work to make sure that we're configuring our policies to automatically redirect those saves. When they save a document, it's coming back onto our network and getting backed up and doing proper, instead of out in the ether on Microsoft OneDrive. So we have to tighten up our policies. We're going to have to increase our time doing training with staff, but I absolutely think we can keep that number as low as possible. I don't foresee a big issue with that. But I didn't include a rosy picture with the budget. I wanted to make sure that it was a fair number. Lastly, is I wanted to slap some hands. We ran into a recent situation where there was a suspension of a supervisor or department head, and software packages that board members approved that person to have without involving IT in the process left us with our pants down while that person was suspended. There are systems out at Highway that were purchased without IT's involvement, so we have no idea how to support them. We don't have any idea if they meet policy guidelines. The person who made the decisions to acquire those items didn't do anything wrong by employee handbook standards because he went ahead and got approval from the board for those acquisitions. So in your future meetings with other committees, please don't approve technology purchases without IT signing off on it, or at least being involved in the process somewhere.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Do you run into the same issues with other entities under the county umbrella? Healthcare center?
I have no involvement with the healthcare center. They have
So
separate.
essentially,
completely-
the same thing holds true there as with highway?
They have completely separate systems and software and
Yeah, completely
acquisition.
separate staff and systems, yeah.
Yep.
So that, for them, that would be the same issue, could be the same issue as Tim's bringing up, that if someone would go around and miss, but you know, they're set up differently out there. There is a CEO out there, and I think that that situation, they are directing, let's just say there's more accountability. I think with our system here, we have a different, we don't have someone in charge laying down the requirement that there be proper communication with your department. And I think they're a little bit different setup, so.
My assumption is there's somebody who handles IT at
They have,
Yes, they have their own staff.
they have their own staff, yeah.
And we do not collaborate. And,
And their software is very different, you know, they're a very different operation out there than here.
I'm not going to go sniffing for more work, but if you were so moved to ask for us to coordinate or collaborate with the health department, that's entirely in your purview.
That's what?
That's entirely up to you. If you were to ask that the IT departments should be working together on acquisitions or coordinating efforts, but I'm not going to go looking for work and suggest that you do that.
Well, I think if that would ever come up, there'd have to be some serious study to determine if there's any benefit in doing that.
Absolutely.
And I think that holds true with, well, there was a little bit of sort of informal discussion about human resources collaborating, and that too isn't worthwhile unless there's adequate study to determine if there's any real benefit. If there isn't, what's the purpose, you know? It just makes more complex for someone involved.
I'm sure they would like to have the same as us, and we'd like to have the same as them so that we'd be a resource for each other. But selection processes have been going on for so long that I'm sure they're in a completely different environment, network-wise, back-end system-wise, software-wise, support-wise. It would take a lot of untangling to unknit what we've done and reknit back together with some agreed-upon choices that would allow us to be resources for each other. But so far, I've not heard anything from the healthcare center that they're struggling with their IT needs, and we haven't reached out for them for help. But on rare occasion, when we were using that space over in Independence briefly, we got some help from them. So they're always willing to help, but it's not been a thing.
Right.
And as far as the other answer to your question, no, inside the courthouse, cooperation's been pretty good, even on little things. The HR department's making people re-sign those handbooks and keeping people aware of those IT policies has helped. They don't go out and download freeware without opening a ticket. So we've gotten through to most departments on that. That's all I have for today.
Any questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Yep, thanks.
Jeremy, you're up.
And I'll just start real quick too, going back to what you had brought up earlier, Audie, about that dirt or that gravel parking lot. So originally when this parking lot went away, the one that was behind our building, all of the county vehicles were originally going to be parked in what's the shared lot that we have with the hospital and the city. The issue that arose with that, what I started doing the dirt lot for, was then we were asking employees to walk. We got social workers that come back after hours at nights or on the weekend. And then in the joint effort with the city, if it was snowing, I would have to come in at 3:30 in the morning and move every one of those vehicles so they could plow. And it just wasn't conducive for me to do that, plus plow what we currently had at the time. So that's what we came up with the gravel lot for. So it was more of a afterthought than when the project started, which is why it wasn't originally included with the building that's going on there now. And then I tried to blacktop it, but because there were already permits pulled for getting the road redone, and the permits that Samuels already have, the city wouldn't grant me one at the time because I didn't have a watershed report from putting blacktop down with the excess amount of water that would run off that little space as opposed to being absorbed into the dirt. So now when the permits are expired and I can pull a new one, I can actually tie into the new storm drain system that runs underneath that gravel lot, because we planned ahead for that. But that just, like I said, trying to give you more clarification so you kind of understood where we were at.
Well, yeah, but I just noticed they put the top mat on here last week, and it's too bad that you couldn't have coordinated that with the top mat, because now, when you get a blacktop, you're gonna have to pay extra fees for mobilization in, mobilization out.
Yep.
And they're gonna have to bring things integrated. It's just like, it'll run the cost up. We could
Yeah.
have saved money if we could have coordinated it with the blacktoppers. You don't have to pay any of that mobilization cost then.
No, and then the
So-
cost-saving efforts that I got with that is most of the work that I have over here done now originally was done by the highway department, so keeping it in-house was a lower cost. Just this last time that I had it re-leveled, I had Haas do it while they were here, or not Haas, but the current excavator that's over here now, working over here, because they were already here on site. Post D is the one that leveled it off and dropped some dirt back in for me, because it was a very low cost. I just had to pay for the gravel. I didn't really have to pay for the time at that point. So, but going forward, that'll be a whole other project that I'll bring up to this committee next year to get that done for the following year. But just some background on that, because that started
Yeah,
obviously
I just
before
seen
you
it
guys
last
were
week.
here, so. So a few projects that were completed here in this past month. The radio towers that are throughout the county, we finished installing the air conditioners in those. The one that was the worst off from what I understood was Blair. We've had no issues with that one with high temperatures there at all. And these are mini split units that will also run heat if we need to. Those towers all have electric base heaters in them already. But what I talked to Dustin from Emergency Management about was when it starts calling for heat, run one of them with the electric base heaters, one of them with the new heaters that I installed, see what the cost difference is for the month and what's going to be more energy efficient to run through the rest of the winter. So it may only be a couple dollars, but a couple dollars savings is a couple dollars with the 6 towers that we have. The brick canopy that's over by the sheriff's department, that's scheduled to start coming down and being replaced with the canopy here in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So that's done, completed before winter comes in. So that was one of the last projects for capital expense that is going to be scheduled to be done this year. 2 more I was at exec finance that I brought up to you guys before to carry over into next year. So I think I'll have to go to the full board here pretty soon just to get approval to carry those over. The generator out at the impound shed has been completed. I'm hoping to go out there today with the deputy to let me inside so we can actually run it and test it and make sure everything is good to go. But it's installed, transfer switches are hooked up, gas lines hooked up, and then we worked out with the maintenance crew there, and we completely encased it in landscaping timbers and then put rocks in there, so it made it a lot easier for the landscaping crew that's out there not to have to try to get in between the generator and the building and a few other things. So, but that one should be good to go. And then, like I said, our prime concern out there was that the power will go out. This will run the entire building, but our primary concern was when we have the portable morgue in use out there, that continues to run if the power is out. So that'll be covered. Biggest issue that we had this building was with our current generator in the past month. We had a power outage a couple weeks ago, and the generator didn't kick in. at all. And so the whole building was completely dark for, I don't know, maybe about 5 minutes, give or take. Went out, figured out what the issue was with that, and what we have is multiple errors in that thing, which is kind of known to me. It's known to past property committees because I've had to try to have that thing replaced a few times, but now we're definitely just trying to limp this thing along until the next year. But I have 3 pinhole leaks in the radiator. There's 4 or 5 holes in the exhaust system, and it doesn't quite match frequency sometimes, so I get a couple different overspeed alarms. Because of the fact that we're replacing the unit instead of replacing the generator, or the radiator in the unit, which I've already done once since I've been here, I'm just going to be working with Fabcat, who's my vendor for that. We're just going to be putting some stop leak in that radiator. It's not optimal. We wouldn't really do that on any other case, but if I'm got to make it last a year, some heat patches on the exhaust system. So right now, we're adding about 2 quarts of oil a week and about a gallon of coolant a week to make sure that the thing continues to, and the battery charger is dead. So I'll be replacing that, and I have an external battery charger hooked up onto it now just to keep a trickle charge on it so it actually starts. But the biggest concern is obviously if the power goes out during the day, it's a strain on IT because his stuff is not all going to just run by itself for quite a minute of time, and the jail is 100% dark at that point if the generator doesn't kick in. Everything else.
For what it's worth, Jeremy's asked for exec finance to correct that issue for 5 years, and we just passed the buck, so.
It
That's
is what
what
it
he's
is,
up
like I
against.
said, and we know that it's getting replaced, and the new generator for the new building will be backfed into this building to cover everything that this building is currently backed up on. The jail and the health department vaccines are the biggest issue. And I worked when we found out the generator was down, the emergency service from my vendor was a 96-hour window. So that's not a really big turnaround for an emergency service. So we were out for a few days with absolutely no coverage. I made sure to let IT, health department, sheriff's department, dispatch know. And then primarily for the health department, I do have 2 standalone, like portable generators here that we had on standby set up so I could plug in their refrigerators if we had any extended amount of time out. But this is, again, just more informational. I'm not going to be asking for any more money for it. It's just going to get more zip ties and duct tape for the next 12 months so that it keeps limping along.
Jeremy, when that thing's cut over to the new one, is what's going to happen with the old one?
That one I haven't gotten a clear definition yet. I don't know if that will be turned over to me to get rid of, which at that case in time I would put it on Wisconsin surplus auction and sell it off, or if it's built into the B&B's bid for them to trade that one in essentially towards the purchase of a new generator. I haven't gotten a clear answer on that one yet. And even my current vendor will be the company that's installing the new one, and he didn't have clarification on that yet either. So I'll be talking to Kurt or Tad or somebody this week just to kind of get an idea what's going on with that.
Yeah, good, because if there is a plan to trade in, great. If not, then, yeah, I think you should try to get
No,
salvage value.
Yeah, it'll get sold. Anytime I can sell anything, I jump right on that because that's the only time I can make revenue for my department is selling anything, so.
What's your policy, Jeremy, for starting that? How often do you run that?
Weekly. Right now, it runs weekly. Every Tuesday morning, it runs. I don't do a load bank test on it every month, but I do that annually or run that. So they'll be back here in 2 weeks, and they'll do a full load bank on that, and they'll run it for 8 hours at that point just to make sure that we're getting the current load that it's rated for. But it does run every week just to keep the fluids. That's why I end up adding oil and coolant right now every week, because it runs and it burns the oil off, leaks the oil, and then leaks out the coolant at the moment. So, but just to, and that was the issue when the power went out. The generator had actually ran its self-test 2 days prior with no issues. So that's why it caught me off guard when it didn't start when the power went out. Dispensers that I brought up to you guys before, those have all been ordered. That's for the toilet paper, everything for the new building. and to replace this building, so everything matches. But that still had a 12-month lead time, which is why it was a project that I brought forth here for budget for next year, and I'll still go to budget hearings next month to bring it up, but I had to order them already, but those are all ordered, and they'll be en route for early for the middle of next year. ADRC across the street, been waiting on the landlord to finish that sewer project. He actually just called when I was here just a little bit ago. They're going to be back here today. I just cleared stuff with ADRC to go camera out that line again. We haven't had any more backups, but they haven't completed the project yet over there either. So that's the kind of the speed that we deal with the landlord over there. We know that there's an issue. We've got everything ripped up, but they just need to replace the line. I've stressed that he needs to get this done sooner rather than later, because I'd rather see it done now just to get it out of the hair than wait until December to try to dig up the street. I know that they're coordinating with the city and Whitehall Electric, because the sewer line, from what they can gather, runs directly underneath a light pole in the street, so the light pole is also going to have to get removed for them to do that. But we've had no current backups, and we'll be there today to hopefully get that work completed, and process to be completed. HR offices upstairs. So a couple months ago, Corp Counsel got an assistant or a secondary Corp Counsel, which shifted around the way that their offices work up there, and the assistant HR is kind of sitting in an open area. You kind of go up there, you can kind of see there's the secretary when you walk in, and then there's a HR assistant over here, and then Krista has an office. It looks like I'm going to end up probably building a wall to separate that HR assistant from the open area, because she can't conduct too much business if other people are in the office area right now. The upside is won't cost anything because of all the air conditioners that I bought at Menards. I have about $1,200 in rebates at Menards right now, so I can go buy all the materials I need for that. So it won't cost my budget anything at all, and I'll end up putting that wall up as a temporary fix, because until we know where everybody's going when this building gets remodeled, I don't want to completely spend a lot of money or change the way that whole office is set up, because I think right now it's land records might be going up in that area, and that may change. But just so you're aware, we're going to end up kind of building a partition wall up there, and building the wall with sheetrock and metal studs is a lot cheaper than buying the cubicle partitions, because we did buy some of those for human services maybe about a year ago, and to build 2.5 cubicles was about $4,500 in parts. This will cost me about maybe $300 in materials, so not too bad. The last thing that I'm still working on, I can't remember if I brought it up to you guys or not in the past, and I'm sure I have, is still trying to get the new building, the new address on the postal route, so that I can stop having my staff drive to the post office twice a day. It's not that it's really far, but it does get kind of, right in the middle of something, and you got to stop at 1:30 to go up there to get mail, or else it misses it till the next day. So the postmaster may end up coming to one of these meetings here in the next few weeks, or in the next few months, just to kind of give some clarification on what we need to do. And I'm still waiting to try to get the solid address on what this whole complex will be when it's completed, whether we're going to continue to keep the 36245 Main Street, or if it's going to be 36245 Hobson. Or no, it wouldn't be 360, it would be something on Hobson, it would be something on, Park Street, or if it's going to be Main Street still. Technically, by the way that it's going, because of the way the entrance faces, it should be a Hobson Street address, but it would be easier for every department involved if we were able to keep the Main Street address. So that one is kind of up to us in joint with land records, from what the city told me, and then because the city won't give me any information other than we need to let them know what our address is going to be so that they can update it. So that one will be brought to property here too, to make a decision on that here fairly soon. Other than that, last issue I had, something new pops up every day, and on my way to the meeting here today, there was a slight sewer smell down here in the basement, whether you guys noticed it or not. Over here, this last door on the left is an elevator equipment room, and in that, the back of that room is a lift station for the sewage station. It has a grinder pump in the bottom. Everything from the basement goes into there, gets ground up and pumped out. It's had 3 or 4 cracks in that lid. We've repaired them as best we could over the past, I think, 7, 8 years that I've been here, and now there's a brand new crack that has appeared in that for some reason, and the only thing I can think of is from the vibrations that have been going on with the construction. So methane is just leaking out of that slowly, which fills makes it a pleasant smell. So that one I'm going to end up having to replace too. That wasn't a budgeted item, so I have no idea. It shouldn't be too much, but hopefully by the time your next meeting is down here, that won't be so noticeable, because it's right now that lid is probably about 50% steel, 50% silicone. So we'll be changing that out here pretty soon. Now I have nothing else, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions or comments for Jeremy? Thanks, Jeremy. Let's put the usual items back on the next agenda. The Samuels Group Venture Building Project discussion / action, IT department updates, maintenance department updates. Anybody have any other things they would like to see on the next meeting's agenda?
Do you want 6 and 7 left off for next time? Or put back on well, it'll be after the department head meetings with Samuels for that number 7.
Yeah, let's not put them back on for next month. I think there's
Okay.
going to be some more time needed for both of those, so.
Got it.
And if we stick with the second Monday of the month, that's what, the 10th of October?
What are we doing the second Monday?
Yeah, well, that's what this one is. I'm just assuming that we picked the second Monday.
Is it 10?
10.
Yeah. 8:30?
Sounds good.
Okay, if there's nothing else before this committee, I will adjourn the property committee at 9:52 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Got just a second.